am honored and I am humbled to be chosen as a Creative Mornings presenter, especially following on the heels of Altina Farid Cook, who I see joined us today. She is a power to behold, a rich and inspiring story. She has an amazing story as a brave and powerful young artist. She defies all assumptions. And if you didn't hear her last month, please check it out on the Creative Mornings website. I hope you all are well. Like many of you, we've been hunkering down for months now and trying to have some level of normalcy and joy in our lives. Sadly, like many, we've had family losses during these difficult weeks, and grief has been not only painful but remote, and I empathize with others here today who are having that experience. So with this theme, insecure, where do you begin? I find myself reflecting about moments of insecurity, and but when those times were when I took a leap without knowing or planning outcomes, not really having any idea what would happen. I don't even know sometimes why I would have the strength or the faith to make that leap. But one of those times the one that I thought would be useful to talk about today was when I got an eviction notice, and how frightening that position was, and yet what a life-changing experience it was. So I'm an artist, I'm a printmaker, mother, business owner, educator, I'm an activist, I'm a runner, an organizer. And all of these roles have often overlapped and helped or, also often hindered my goals or aspirations. And I have to tell you, I was whining once to my friend Alison Desforges, who's not with us anymore, about not having enough time and mental space for my studio work. I'm sure a lot of you get that, right? Especially, I'm wondering about a lot of the young moms who are balancing so many things. You know what I'm talking about. But we had been working together on a campaign. We were actually door knocking, and she listened with her typical forbearance and said to me that a woman's life is like a patchwork quilt, and all these pieces and patches create the whole. And it's just such an apt analogy even now. And I'm really glad I was able to say that without crying, because I practiced this before and I started bawling, and I was like, what? Where did that come from? So let me get back to this eviction notice. I was leasing space for my business and studio. I had, in the mid-90s, bought a small screen printing business. And that too, believe me, was a leap. I mean, lots of insecurities around that. My training is in academia and fine arts. And now I had to learn and apply my skills for a commercial venture. So, those of you who are artists, right? You make a mistake in the studio, you make a mistake in a painting or a drawing, and it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. I like that. I can use that. Yeah, it doesn't work for clients. No, it has to, when they want something a particular way, you've got to know how to do that. So there was a huge learning curve, and I learned a lot. So at any rate, this space, it was not only for my screen printing business, but it was for my studio practice. It was one of the things that actually was quite a bonus that I hadn't realized when I started going into business, was being able to use this as a way of subsidizing my art practice. So I could actually use the machinery and the materials for my work. So it was really the foundation of and the home for my own practice. Also for my husband's. My husband is Peter Swisky, and his paper making studio was there as well. So suddenly we faced a time with like lots of unknowns, and it was like, what would we be able to do when we had to like get out of this space and get out now. So one thing we considered was, you know, I had a garage to our home, you know, it was like kind of a nice little garage. And I have to tell you a little bit about this home because ultimately we left that behind. That was the decision. We had this really beautiful arts and crafts house on a street that was all, you know, single homes, lots of big porches, people hanging out. And we had very lovingly restored it to its original state. And I had a garden in the back. It was just something I had not known anything about. I learned how to garden, and I created espalier tree fence, a beechwood tree screen, outdoor rooms. It was really very special. So this was a big deal. So between traveling all the years from the 90s until this happened in, I think it was about 2005 or so. Between traveling between there and my studio, we passed this small warehouse that we admired that had been for sale for quite a while. And we considered, well, maybe we could just, you know, we could purchase that, and that could become not only our studio, but our home and my office. And it was, you know, kind of like a pie in the sky sort of a dream. And I'll tell you though, it was inspired, and this is a little bit of a segue. It was a couple of years before that, I had attended a lecture at UB on the South Campus. It was sponsored by the Architecture and Planning Department. I was there, it was not for the lecture. I had gone there because there was going to be an award ceremony for Brad Wales, who was an architect there, whom I've known for a while, and his students. And the lecture, it should have happened the night before, but because of some glitch, it was going to happen this evening. And they said, please, you know, you should stay, you should really stay. So this lecture was by an architect named David Auger. And David Auger is an architect from South Africa. And I was completely transformed and transfixed by this lecture. He at that time was designing studios and homes for artists in England, among other kinds of clients. He did other things as well. But these spaces were so different and so special from anything that I'd seen before. There was something, you know, I don't even know, I've tried to find the right words for it. I'm just not that wordsmith. But I hate to use this word, but they really did feel kind of sacred in a way. At any rate, you might recognize David Auger's name because he's quite an acclaimed architect now, and he designed the National Museum of African American History, which is in Washington, D.C. That's one of his very stunning buildings. So that was part of this inspiration. Obviously, you know, couldn't duplicate that, but to have that kind of special space. So, you know, more about this building. It was in terrible shape. The roof was leaking. It had been leaking for a very long time. The jungle, it was a jungle of a backyard. It was scary. The windows were filled in, and it smelled really, really bad. So, you know, it was a leap. It was like, well, you know, we thought we could shape it into our studio and business and home, and with the help of our friend, our architect, Brad Wales, who's simply amazing. And also the contractor, who happens to be my brother, DMR Contracting, who do like exceptional work. We did it. And that's another story, and that's a great story, but that's not the story I want to tell you about. I want to tell you about the story of our neighborhood. So so we move into this neighborhood, and it's plagued by lots of problems. Okay, the neighborhood I'm talking about is along Niagara Street, and it has a high poverty level. It's long been overlooked for any improvements to the infrastructure. It's the kind of area that drivers speed through to get to their next destination. There's certainly, at least at this time, was not any place that people were stopping at. It feels unsafe as a pedestrian. It is unsafe as a pedestrian. There's not much green space or amenities to make it a destination. Vacant and dilapidated buildings. In fact, I remember at one point talking to Weedy, West Economical Development Incorporated, about placing some of their businesses on Niagara Street, and that there were some potential openings, and they were like, no, this doesn't work, it's not viable, that wouldn't help the owner. So, and it was, the whole area is just plain, ugly. But the potential, so I'm here and I'm looking, and it's like, of course I've been back and forth. I'd actually been leasing in this area that's where my space was, where I was leasing before. It's got a rich cultural history. It's astride the Black Rock Canal and the Niagara River. There are places where up on an escarpment. So even though the 190 and the railroad tracks are right there, you can see over to the water. It's got an industrial history that's fascinating. And we can look at all of those buildings as, even though they were vacant, and the potential that they have. So, I was like, what is wrong with this picture? Why is this like this? Like, what is going on? And I just started calling people and inquiring anybody I could ask about this who would know anything. And I started crashing meetings and organizations. And I found out that there were a lot of people asking the same questions. There were a lot of people dealing with a lot of the issues that were going on in this area, and which are some of the same issues that are going on all over the city, and other sections of the city. I learned a lot about City Hall, and that's where I can say, yeah, there's a lot there. There are a lot of people there to help, and then there's a lot of people that don't help. But I want to say, like, this is why I'm saying that the leap was so good. So my world opened up. It opened up into a really different place. Like, I think about all of these organizations of people that I don't think I would have known if I hadn't moved to this area and become engaged and involved in trying to make some positive change. And we have been able to make some positive change. Certainly, working with a number of places, like people and organizations like Go Bike and Push, Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper, Buffalo Urban Front. There are so many, but eventually, a few of us created this not-for-profit Vision Niagara, and we were focused on reinvigorating this Niagara Street corridor in the city of Buffalo. So we've had some successes, and we've had lots of defeats. It's not been easy. So for one of the things, for example, we were able to successfully halt, as things have started indeed heating up on Niagara Street, as most of you probably know. We were able to halt a developer from putting in and installing a suburban style Tim Hortons, a drive-through on the street. And with us and with some other organizations being able to push back enough, the developer came back with a project that fit much better into the neighborhood. I'm still sad that it's a drive-through, because that's not appropriate, but at least we got that. Another developer, he was proposing to bring in a 10-story building for market rate apartments, 10 stories. This is something that requires a number of variances from the Green Code. We pushed back on that and said, it might be possible if you include affordable housing. and if you help us establish green spaces. They agreed to both. So these kinds of things, I think, have worked out really well. We've also been very involved with getting a complete street redo of the corridor so that we can have stormwater planners where the runoff does not go directly into the sewers and then overflow and into the river. And we're getting the bike lanes, which will be, you know, a very big difference. So that's coming along really well. And it's been a long time. It's been like 8 years of advocating, planning, and collaborating. And some of the naysayers say, oh my God, this is like, you know, this is ridiculous. So typical Buffalo, takes too long. But I think if it had happened sooner, this Niagara Street project at least would not have been nearly as good. I think it's really come a long way, so it's going to be really pretty great. And even now you can see how developers are glomming onto the street now, rehabbing buildings as apartments, lots of new businesses. So we still are advocating for being sure that we don't gentrify this neighborhood to the point where it pushes people out. And some of our efforts, you know, if you're interested in helping us, we can always use that help. One of the things we're working on a lot is that beautiful jewel of a park, Broderick Park, that's really heating up again and trying to get that looking the way that it should. And by the way, Weedy bought a building on Niagara Street and they're going to rehab it and they're going to be putting their International Bazaar into that building. So yay, that's really pretty great. So at any rate, it was exciting and scary to move into a neighborhood that had so many problems and to jump from a cozy residential house to rehabbing a warehouse. But both prospects were and are exciting and, you know, stitched together another section to that patchwork, that quilt of my life. Being open to change despite feeling insecure and unsure of my future has been a recurring theme. So I'm hoping that there's a little bit of relevance to the strange times we find ourselves in now. Thank you.